Hello again. I want to touch on an issue that I seem to have probably resolved myself. I made a video earlier. Oh, sorry, kind of late. I made a video earlier about changing the line width here in the raft. The red one is PETG. The yellow one is gold PLA. And I'm using a 0.2 nozzle. Now you have to keep in mind PETG and PLA are two very different filaments with very different temperature requirements. Now I have done calibration of my PLA filament and found that bridges, for instance, they are best at 190 degrees on this specific filament. It's a black silk filament made by Flashforge. But my PETG is also tuned, but it's branded CC3 transparent PETG. So really good PETG. I get awesome prints with it. Problem is this one has a ideal temperature of 255 for the most perfect bridges. Then you have a difference if I've tried to load it at 250 a little bit, and it's okay at 250, so I can do that. Problem is that when you have one filament doing 190 and then you have another filament requiring 250, and this one, which required 250 to become melted enough to pass through a 0.2 nozzle, it generates a very specific problem. Because if you look at the layers here, the first layer here is printed with PETG. So when it's finished with this layer, it will go and it will do a change of filament. But for some reason it doesn't fully heat up that filament to 250 degrees when it's purging or flushing. So what happens is that it lowers the temperature of the 0.2 nozzle to 190 degrees, and then it tries to insert the PLA. Problem is 190 degrees is not enough to fully melt the PETG. And basically what happens is that let me see, I'll drop a picture. The PLA is pushed roughly this far in to the nozzle, and then the remainder part here is filled with PETG. This requires 235, I think, to melt properly. This one requires 190, maybe less to melt. So this one, the PLA basically touches a filament inside the nozzle which is not melted, and the extruder is trying and pushing and pushing so much that it warps the filament inside the extruder to the extent that it creates a block inside the extruder between the gears. In essence, then you don't have a clogged nozzle, but you get a clogged extruder because the filament is basically unable to pass through the upper section of the hotend. So I just wanted to tell you guys that if you are going to do like I do in this example here, you're going to start printing a PLA on top of a PETG, then make sure those two have almost the same temperature. So in this case I will need to increase the temperature to 240, which I have actually printed successfully before with this specific filament. Now, if you're using Bamboo Studio, it's different places you change it, but yeah, you get my point. In addition, I do recommend to leave the temperature of the hot plate for the PLA, like in this case, engineering plate is set to 70 for PLA. Why? Because then you don't need to have the print job change time for printing, because it needs to lower and then reheat the build plate. So sorry, long day. So anyway, I'm just gonna let you know about that. If you want to print PLA on top of the PETG, make sure that PLA has the same temperature or almost the same temperature, or is within the range of the melting temperature of the PETG that you're using. If you don't use a PETG that has a melting temperature within that range, then you need to use a different PETG. So if your PETG is only certified for 250 above, then you need to find a PETG that can do 235 or similar to melt, so that the temperature is going to be equal when it tries to flush out of the nozzle. Hope that helps everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.